Hi, I'm Piyush Puty and I'm the cinematographer of Joram. So in 2021 November, Devashish Makhija reached out to me with his script Joram because he had liked my previous documentary which I made in 2015, Ahmedabad Ma Famous. After that, he hasn't liked any of my work, but thankfully a work from 2015 gave me the script Joram, and the beauty with which everything was written about the characters, about the land, about the emotions, about the struggle is something that I took up the challenge how to convert those words into a more visual medium. So that is something that actually made me a little more attracted towards this particular project. Prepping for the cinematography of this film Joram, something that I had never experienced before, like land of the tribals. I have never lived with the tribals, I have never lived a life of the tribals, but they've actually spent quite a lot of months living with the tribals. That's where all his stories, all his ideas, all his visuals, everything, all the drama that has come into the story has come from the lives of tribals. The first thing actually told me that forget about the shots, forget about your frames. Let's go and just see how the village looks like, how it actually feels like to be there, how the nights look like, how the days look like, how the morning looks like, what the soil feels like, what the green, exact hue of the green you see in the trees. So that is something that he said, let's just go and observe. And the way you look at things while you're observing them is what you need to translate into the film. So that was our primary approach, going to the tribal to the locations, bringing the authenticity into the film, because at times, because the fact that the cameras can never be as powerful as a human eye, and a human eye can always see things beyond any technical equipment. One thing they've actually always mentioned about approaching this film visually was actually staying close and honest to the characters, because he wanted the audience to be closer to the characters and not drawn by the premises. Let the premises have an impact on the characters, and that is something that they've always wanted out in the film. What your characters are going through, what their struggle is like, what is the reality, what is the ground reality of the characters. So that has been one basic idea of approach in the process of shooting this film. At the same time, also we ensured one thing, that the technicalities of filmmaking, or say the tool of filmmaking or the style of filmmaking, always needs to take a back seat instead of taking the attention of the viewers in terms of, oh look how cool this shot is, oh look how cool the way they have shot it. That is something we wanted to avoid in our film, and we wanted the audience to be consistently connected to the characters in the film. So those were the two basic principles that we actually followed in our film, and we ensured anything that has nothing to do with the characters, any shot, any visual, anything, any landscape, however great the landscape is or the great light is, if it has nothing to do with our characters, we are not going to shoot it. So that was one big approach that we had while shooting this film. Let's stay as consistent, let's shoot anything that has relevance to our characters. It was basically three characters in the film, the primary characters. But there were other smaller characters around these primary characters, what their world, their life, and everything that had an impact on them. Also, how each character had an impact on the other characters. You know, that is something that we wanted to always stay consistent about throughout our approach of the film. So that's something that they've always wanted me to actually find a way to translate into his film. How do we actually approach on? That's where we actually decided to go with a smaller camera, Sony FX3 as well, in the equipment list, because Sony A7S III or Sony FX3 comes with a dual ISO sensor, and it has a low light ISO of 12,800, where you can actually see things that a human eye possibly cannot. That makes the authenticity of a dark night translate into a film, which you can take it to the audience. So that was the first approach about keeping the authenticity of the place, of the visuals, of the village, of the locations in the film. Second was actually understanding the skin tones. That is where I actually accompanied him for the actor workshops that happened in Jharkhand when we were actually casting for the secondary actors. And a lot of actors we got from Jharkhand to understand how they're actually behaving, how their skin tones look like. Because to actually light up somebody in Bombay who's pretty fair is very easy, but somebody with a skin tone from Jharkhand who's exposed to sunlight throughout the day, how do you light them up? How does their skin look against the red soil? That is something that you have to actually understand before you translate it into your film. In the meantime, I also accompanied him to the workshops that were happening with Manoj Bajpayee sir and Zeeshan Ayub and Smita Tambe, so that I understand what their body language and their chemistry is. That is something that can convert into the camera approach language as well, because how they move around, how they behave is something what the camera needs to behave as well, so that the audience is closer to them. You know, you're looking at them exactly how you are supposed to look at them. So that is where the biggest responsibility comes into me being the first audience of the film, because when you're looking at the viewfinder, you have the complete control of the visual, and you know that you know what you're looking. You are the first person who's actually seeing this film, is going to make it to the theaters, which everybody else will be watching months later. Even in the recce itself, when we were recreating the scene ourselves within our team, because when you don't have your light equipments with you, you actually try to put on a lamp and like shoot it. And when we later revisit the scene, we realize that actually this looks more authentic and more dramatic than what we would actually do to spoil it with our lights. So we decided to actually take that step of being authentic about approach. And let's see, I mean, cameras are pretty advanced nowadays. We don't have much to worry about. So let's see how it works. We might fail, but let's approach. It looks authentic and it looks dramatic as well, going with the authentic lights. And similarly, another thing about approach of the village in Joram, normally in Bollywood films, you would see that it's all lamps and bulbs in warm bulbs in the villages, in the huts, in a rural area. But the fact is, if you go to any rural village in India right now, it's all solar powered LED lights. So it's all white lights. So how are you making your audience feel the rural area now, or are you making them experience something that is in their imagination? So we wanted to be more authentic about the reality than what an imagination of a village would be. So there is this very interesting scene of Muchaki and Ratnakar sitting silently on this huge rock, and they're actually revealing the entire plot. I mean, that is, if you see that scene, it's actually staying far away from the light, far away from the people, and opening the real you. That is something that actually came out from what Dev and I used to do during the prep, during the shoot. We used to actually both go far away, sit exactly the way Ratnakar and Muchaki were sitting, and we used to just talk about what are the problems that we have in front of us right now, how do we tackle them. There are things that we wanted to communicate to the team members that was not happening, our own struggles. We used to open up to each other basically. I mean, Dev and I used to open up to each other, sitting far away from the crew and sitting far away from the light. And that was always in the darkness, and that is something I know initiated that whole designing of Ratnakar and Muchaki sitting on that rock far away from the cops and from the light, and opening up their own dilemmas, their own problems, the reality, I mean the truth. I mean, they can speak the truth when they are in the dark, because that's where you can actually hide your emotions. That's a place where you can actually not be scared of being seen, that your real emotions can not be seen.
वो सुने सर कि खुद ही जाती थी जंगल में सुपरवाइज करने। इनकाउंटर एको माओवादी जिंदा नहीं धरा गया सर। ये 10 रुपये शायद वही तलम का है, तबे छोड़कर भागा था।
So that is something that Devashish actually designed, that let it be a little far away, let it be a little meditative, let it be where people sit and just listen. That's not much drama happening, but it was not that easy scene to shoot with, because that's again, I mean, in our entire film, the tripod caught rust because they were in the van for 3 months. It was, the entire film was shot handled, and this particular shot as well. Of course, this scene is actually divided and parallelly cut with 2 other scenes, but it was shot in one go, so it was a 7 to 8 minute long one take, and we finished it in 2 takes. But it was one long shot where I had to be absolutely still with the character. If the character is still, I'm still, I can't be moving. If the character decides to move at any point, I am supposed to move with them, react to them. So that is where the biggest challenge comes in a scene like this, where it's really meditative, but there's a lot of drama happening with both my assistants holding me from both sides so that my back doesn't break or the shot doesn't get ruined, you know. Primary being the shot doesn't get ruined. Second, of course, when you're shooting something like this, when you know that you need to show that it's actually dark and it's not the light that's kept really close to me, and it's a light coming from really far away, you need to actually expose the background. You need to be seeing the information in the dark background. So we actually exposed for the background first with the smaller Sony FX3 camera, where we went with the higher ISO, dual ISO mode, and then we pumped a little bit of light on the face so that we get that impact of it's a moody, dark night, you know. So now the opening scene was designed in a very different way. The scene was actually Manoj Bajpayee, Dasru, getting down the todi tree, getting onto a cycle, going home in the cycle, Vano riding the cycle, they're enjoying, they go home, they make the todi, they get drunk, they are high, and then they're swinging. So that was the whole first opening sequence. But to get the cream of that sequence, we just use the climax of that sequence. That is, they are high and they're enjoying and they are swinging. That is something, the idea was given by our editor Abro. Because he mentioned this is a great shot, and how do you actually make a shot better than what it is by using it at the right place, you know, at the right time. So what better than actually using it as the opening of the film? So that actually sets your tone. So the climax of an opening sequence becomes the opening of our film, and that is why you see the pace of the film actually unfolds really fast.
ओ झूले रे लादो मुके लादो पला से जो मेरे महुआ के फूल जो मेरे पला से
So in fact, if you see the opening scene, it has just 2 shots. One shot is of course a profile shot of the camera swinging from one character to the other, swinging and coming back to the other character and swinging back to the other character. And the other shot is actually the POV of Vano looking at Dasru as the swing keeps going closer to him and going away from him. And for both the shots, we use 2 different cameras. So for the profile shot with the camera swinging, we use the Sony Venice with the anamorphic lenses, master anamorphic lenses. And for the POV shot, which needed to be way more practical with the autofocusing and a little more flexible in terms of doing that scene, I actually was sitting on the swing with my hands around the ropes of the swing, and the ropes are actually tied pretty close to each other by the action director, so that the ropes actually don't affect my shot. The pressure of the ropes pushing outwards doesn't affect my shot. So that's the reason, that's the way we actually got that consistent shot of swinging, that POV of swinging closer to Dasru and away from him. We might not have action in this sequence, in this love sequence, but the action director comes into action in a time like this. So the train action chase sequence is possibly the most difficult sequence I've ever shot in my life. Because we wanted to keep it authentic, and both me and Dev knew that no matter what, we can never shoot on a train made in a set, because it's never going to look authentic. So we have to shoot in a real train. One important thing that we knew is that it's not as easy to run inside a train as it's shown in a film. We have a lot of train experience, traveling and train experience, but we have never chased anyone in a train. So that is something we said, let's go and experience it ourselves. So we booked a train from Bombay to Pune, and me, my assistants, and Dev's assistants, and the production team, we tried to run in the aisle of the train. We understood what the moving lights look like, and how much, if we're actually walking in the aisle of the train, how much outside stuff we are actually seeing. Can we do it in a moving train, or can we do in a static train? If we're doing in a static train, then can we actually, how do we minimize the VFX cost? So that is how we designed, and we put our team members sitting across, and we jumped across them to actually design, understand the kind of struggle that we have. So we understood the character struggle. Then the bigger struggle that we had was to run in the aisle with a camera. So that's where we decided to get Sony Venice, because Sony Venice is a camera that you can actually separate the sensor and the lens and the camera body. That is where we decided that we need to shoot with a camera that gives you more flexibility in a place like this, where I can actually run physically with the camera in my hand behind the characters. Also, we had to be very precise with our planning and what and how much we are shooting, because shooting in train is really expensive in India. I mean, and for a film like this, that was a major cost that was going into the shooting in the train itself, because there's pre-lighting and then there's shooting happening. Of course, while shooting, we faced the problems, we faced the Bombay monsoons, the storm struck, and our set collapsed, our light collapsed. We had to stop the shooting. We had to, the next morning, we are sleepless. Next morning, we come back, we set up the tents again, the lights again, and still staying sleepless. We shoot in the night. So we finished in the time in the that fixed budget itself, but the kind of sleeplessness that we had to go through is something that was really difficult. This is the overall thing. Now coming to the smaller technicalities of actually shooting in a train. We made a tent which could accommodate 2 compartments. So we always had half compartment, then one full compartment, and then the half compartment then of the next compartment. So we always knew that both the ends are covered, and all we had to do was to move the train into that shed, so that we have created our moving lights. We have people actually pushing the train to create that train vibrations. So all of that was happening within that shed, but we kept on moving the compartments between them, and we shot it across 3 days, where I was actually, and also while shooting, it's not easy, because what you're seeing a character running. What you don't see is that there's a character running, jumping over the bags, and there's a person behind him shooting with a camera. He's jumping over the same bags and running behind him, and there's an attendant who's carrying the camera body, because the lens and the sensor is what I'm holding, and he's holding the camera body, and he's running behind me, and he has to time his jump on the bag at the same time as well. So that is something that was the most challenging in terms of getting things in 1 take, 2 take, or max 3 takes, because you can't make your actors tired shooting an intense action sequence within 3 days. So it had to be precisely designed and timed as well to achieve the shots that we are actually doing. Also, in terms of shooting the action sequences, there is one thing that Dev and I always decided: it will not have a lot of cuts. We need to have long shots, so that people get time to register with the character, with the drama that's happening, instead of cutting from one frame to the other, just showing an action instead of actually getting the audience hooked into the action. So that is something that we had decided, something that I had observed in a lot of action films in Hollywood, where they would actually have long action shots instead of having 7 cuts in 5 seconds, instead of having one long 5-second shot. This is something that we always aimed at, that we should always have at least 10 to 12 seconds of long shots to use. That is something that we always ensured, that how do we get long shots in action. For the train chase sequence, considering the fact that we needed closer focal distance, we needed it to be more VFX friendly, the visuals, so we actually changed to ultra prime lenses even on the Sony Venice camera. So we have that consistency of images across the whole train chase action sequence, with the spherical lenses to make it, of course, VFX friendly and to go closer to the characters. So if you remember that particular scene in the train bathroom where he's actually cleaning the baby and he's actually really close. So you see the camera is pretty close to the characters, and we've shot it in the real toilet of the train. So if in that space you have a cinematographer, a character and a baby and a camera between the three of them, so you know that you have to be really critical about what equipments you're using, and the equipments are in your favor of helping you in shooting in these conditions. So the other interesting sequence was the market action sequence. So now in terms of designing the characters, to create the lighting is first to understand how you design the character. So for Dasru's home is in the dark, is in the forest. That's where he finds his peace, that's where he finds his safety. So if you see that particular scene actually starts with him sitting in the dark. The moment he realizes that there are cops, he starts walking into the light, that is the market area. That is where he gets attacked, and he goes to the other end of the market and he starts running away into the dark, into the forest, because that's where he is safe, because that's his place of complete confidence. Now that is how we design the lighting, so that entire space, all the lights that are there are in the market itself. Anything beyond the market, the spaces are the lights coming from the market. So it has to be the after effects of the market light falling around in the darkness, in the forest, in the trees, whatever you see around. So that was the basic understanding about how we actually design the lighting of that entire space. As I mentioned that we always wanted to keep it authentic, something that Dave mentioned in our prep itself, that he doesn't want the nights to look like, oh, there's a huge light coming from behind the trees, rays of light from behind the trees. Nights in the forest are actually dark. So consciously something we designed was how we create anything that you see in the dark, any kind of light has to be a man-made light. That's when I'm running with the characters, and then Ratnakar joined, the rest of the cops joined, and the moment he's out of the market, he's running towards the dark, he's running towards the forest, because that's where his safety is. Ratnakar is running with the fear, with the threat that I'm losing this guy, and he's running, and you can create that drama because when you're actually running with a torch, you see the light going up and down. So in his POV, you actually see Dasru in the dark and in the light, and in the dark in the light in the same shot. For Dasru, I was the one who was running behind Dasru, and with me Devashish was running with a torch going up and down to create that effect of what Ratnakar was doing. And the counter shot, I was sitting on the bike with the camera, and I let my assistant ride the bike, and I told Ratnakar to chase me. And I told my assistant, drive as fast as you can, let's lose him. That's how we designed that Dasru is actually faster than Ratnakar. And that drama was actually created in these two shots. And when he vanishes into the dark, you see that Ratnakar reaches the dark forest, and he's creating his own silhouette with the torch. The moment is, moving the torch around, he's creating his own silhouette, something that I was inspired from this film Babel. So this is all about the dramatic market action sequence. When I read Dave's script, and I remember watching Bhosle, that how authentic he is, and how much the cinematographer had to be fit to be in pace with Bhosle for an old man. And then I see that now it's Dasru who is only running in the entire film. I realized, oh my god, I have to actually be much fitter than what I am to actually catch up with this guy. And the challenge was actually being sandwiched between somebody as talented as Devashish Makhija and somebody as committed as Manoj Bajpayee. I mean, you have to up your game in a place like that, because you cannot fall behind. And especially because that's the vision behind me. The person with the vision is behind me, and the person who's actually the image is right in front of me, and somebody who's connecting those is actually me. So I have to actually catch up with their intensity, with their pace, with their imagination. So that is something that I actually pushed myself, that I need to be much fitter than what I am.
Rolling action.
And in this process, actually, I lost 5 kgs doing 4 rehearsals with Devashish Makhija and 2 takes with Manoj Bajpayee. This is something that they were told me that this guy's tired now. He's running, but he's tired. So when you're actually tired and you're running, when you're about to faint, that is what it feels like. The world feels like a slow shutter. And that is something that I knew that, oh, this is something that Sony FX3 gives me the flexibility with a slow shutter. So let's shoot that slow shutter. I mean, I showed it with Dave, and Dave took a minute and he realized, yes, this is exactly what it feels like when you're actually tired and you're running, because the world feels blurry. I mean, as long as that translates to the audience, that's great. But the whole idea of slow shutter was that he's tired right now. I mean, if you see, it's a POV, it's a slow shutter, he's tired. And the shots of him running, you see that it's a normal shot. He's running in the full pace, but his POV is that it's actually slow shutter. He doesn't know where he's going to run, but he is running, he's running in the forest.